I'm going to call the adjourned meeting of Paramount City Council to order. Can we have roll call members, please?
Councilmember Gian, Councilmember Lemons.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer.
Here.
Mayor Hansen.
Here. Before we actually get started, I have a little statement that I'd like to make. I want to thank you all for attending today's meeting. We're glad that you've chosen to be involved in city government. Just for clarification, before we get started, I want to emphasize that there is only one item on the agenda for consideration, and that's to talk about the vacancy left open by former City Council member Diane Martinez following her retirement from office this past Friday. The city manager will present the council with options outlined under the state law. After the city manager's presentation, the council will consider those options and make a decision on whether to fill the vacancy, and if so, the process authorized under the law. Also, the city council will not consider nor make a decision on the proposed budget for the 2020 tonight. There will be a full discussion of the budget at the June 18th city council meeting 1 week from today. I want to encourage you all to be here so that you can be a part of that process. So I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page before getting started and before some of you come up to the podium during the public comment period. Mr. Marina, do we have public comment cards?
Yes, we do, Mr. Mayor. We have a number of public comment cards for the item on the agenda tonight, and then we have 5 for the general public comment period.
General public
Yes,
comment?
sir.
We can do that at this point?
Sure, and 2 of those are regarding the budget, so just so you know, just so you're aware. So if you want to start off, we have the first speaker is Mr. Michael Avila, and it's in regards to no air monitoring.
Okay.
Mr. Avila?
While we're waiting for Michael to go up, can we just get a clarification, Tom? I just want to make sure that because this is an open city council meeting and public comments, people can say or ask questions about anything, even though the only agenda item is the filling of the seat. But at any city council meeting, and I would refer this to Mr. John Kavanaugh, in a public comment time in the beginning of a city council meeting, people can make comments.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be related to the agenda.
On this portion, it doesn't have to relate to the agenda at all.
And I just wanted to make sure that everybody in the audience understood you can speak on whatever you choose to speak on and in this portion, because it was just a little
Yes,
confusing.
that's
Yeah,
correct.
that's right.
Good evening, council members. Good evening, city residents. My name is Michael Alva, and I was going to speak on something else also, but I'm just wondering what's going on with the air monitoring in my area. I live in the designated metal factory grinding area. The smell has gotten to a point where my home smells like a refinery. I've had the county come in, Los Angeles County come in, a health director. They were amazed at the air quality inside my home. Very concerned, advising me to move due to the risk inside the home. And I had told them that this had been going on since I'd moved in. Asked me what the city was doing about it, and I said nothing. So I'm just wondering if there's any way of putting some type of monitoring system on the corner of Illinois and Jefferson or Minnesota and Jefferson, since my house kind of basically is an X in that area, so that the county health department can get more information on what's happening with that.
Beck, would you like to respond to that?
I'm sure all
We
air.
answered some of those questions already.
Yeah, all air monitoring, Mr. Alva, is done by the Air Quality Management District. So we could put in the request that they add a monitor or relocate one of the monitors if they feel that is necessary, but they truly are the ones that monitor for the air quality.
I
So
just
we'll put
wanted
in
to
that
just make sure and put on record that that my health care providers, doctors are aware of this situation, and my next step is to go to the LA County board and discuss this with all my documentations from the county and the health department. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Next.
Oh, okay. There are chairs in the back for those of you that are in the back if you want to, and if I could direct staff to pull out some more chairs, that way everybody has a seat. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Mr. Enrique Dublan, and who would like to discuss soccer and the infields.
Hi, good afternoon. Actually, not exactly the sport, I mean the soccer.
Hold on just 1 second, please.
Okay.
Maybe if you get away, we could understand a little better.
Sorry.
You're breathing hard into that. Try it now.
That's fine like that?
That's better, yes.
Okay. Not exactly the soccer. I was trying to like a sport in general, because for me, my kid is really focused in the sport, and I start to realize a lot that education is so important these days, of course, and all over the world. But at the same time, it's so important the sports in general. So I would like, that they can, all the guys, they got the power to build and to fund the money to build more like a soccer fields all over the city, because I've been in a lot of cities like Belgarden, for example, and they got huge soccer fields and a lot of sports, and that's I think so important, just like education, because that's the only way that most of the kids, the young people, they get rid of the stress that everybody, especially the people who live in the city, that's the only way. The only way is to get rid of the stress is about the sports. So for me, it's so important that, once in a while, I keep remembering what happened in other states. Thanks to God, it doesn't happen in this state. What happened in those states about it gets too much stress when the kids and they get crazy, and what we do to the other kids. So for me, it's kind of like too much stress for those kids as soon as later. So one of the best, I think, investment besides this, the schools is the sports. So I just want to, comment on that is so much for me, for my kid, and for my family, and I think for the whole community. And that's all I want to say, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. I mean, we have the PYSO here, and they've been doing a pretty good job with most of the soccer things, I believe. Is that they've
From
got
what
a
I'm-
lot of kids
Should I wait here
involved
for
in
the
that.
answer over there?
What's that?
Should I wait for the answer over here or over there?
He's
know
wanting
what-
to know, should he wait
Yeah,
for
the
the answer
answer-
here at the podium
Yeah,
or
just
in
to
a
know
seat?
what-
Yeah,
what's-
they'll
what's the
come
plan?
to
They'll
you.
come, yeah.
Parks and Recs Director can come
Yeah.
over and speak to you. He'll give you his card.
Right.
David Johnson. David, you want to show him
Right,
who you are?
yeah.
I know.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, he'll
Okay.
give you his card. Okay, Mr. Mayor, our next speaker is Mr. Jose De Leon, and he has some general comments, general questions. Mr. De Leon? We do. And for those of you that are in the audience and need Spanish interpreting, we do have an interpreter in the back and headphones there.
Is he here?
One more time, Mr. De Leon, is he in the audience? No? Okay. Our next speaker is, sorry about that. Our next speaker is Mr. Carlos Rubio, and he'd like to speak about the budget.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, staff, and constituents. I also want to recognize there are some city employees present in the audience, so I just wanted to recognize their presence. My name is Carlos Rubio, and I'm a senior business representative for Teamsters Local 911. I work for the Teamsters Union. I have been an advocate for working people for over 15 years. Teamsters Local 911 represents over 10,000 members throughout Southern California in the public and private sectors. We represent many members in neighboring cities, and many Teamster families call the city of Paramount their home. Today, I am here to advocate on behalf of many of your employees who have authorized me to speak on their behalf. Although we recognize that today's meeting is regarding an important council member vacancy, we wanted to turn out today and express our opinion regarding some important matters affecting city workers. Employees do not agree with the terms and conditions being recommended in the upcoming budget as it relates to having them pay towards their pension. Please understand that under the current format, employees do not have an opportunity to negotiate with the city. Therefore, the city administration can recommend anything they want. Moreover, there is not a mandate by CalPERS for employees to share in the cost towards their pension. There are provisions per state law for public agencies and their employees to reach a memorandum of understanding associated with these major potential changes. These are career-changing modifications, and they affect your pension towards the end when you go to CalPERS for a calculation. Understanding that these changes are within management rights, it does not mean that they're appropriate. That's why state law provides for the union, association, exclusive representative, and their employer to negotiate some of these changes through collective bargaining. Absent collective bargaining, we believe it would be a major blow to city employees if the city mandated for them to pay towards their pension against their will. Further, these types of arrangements do not look good to the community when the city manager is getting a wage increase above 3%. I believe the increase is 5%. Being a city manager for a city is a lot of responsibility, and this is why traditionally city managers receive a higher salary and benefits package. But being a maintenance worker or a secretary is also a lot of responsibility. And traditionally, the salary and benefits packages do not go beyond $100,000 or $70,000. I'm going to ask you to please, and I urge you, do not pass this budget on the backs of workers. It's bad for morale, it's bad for this community, and it's a stain on your leadership. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further?
Okay, our next speaker is Mr. Daniela Cans. Ms. Daniela Cans.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Daniela Cams, and I've lived in Paramount for over 30 years, and I'm a former adult ed educator at the Paramount Unified School District. Last week's budget overview has several premises that just don't seem to add up. The revenue is projected to drop several percent next year versus prior year. Why? When I look around our city, I see the seeds of many of the revitalization efforts bearing fruit. Are you predicting that the development programs, processes, efforts from this year will cause a setback? This does not inspire much confidence in your staffing plan to promote people into these positions, especially if they are not demonstrating the ability to make a positive change. The trend in the revenue line doesn't support your claims that it will decline. This looks like an effort to support increasing taxes. The outside research group who presented their findings about concerns in the city seemed very stilted and again supported increasing taxes. Of the top box issues, safety was number one, yet there was nothing in the budget that supported this expressed important issue. This stems from the city's long history of issues with air quality and chromium-6. This budget review did not address this top priority at all. We have seen at the past several council meetings the oversight provided by AQMD, which has now ended, is resulting in a steady increase in the amount of poisonous emissions from the companies that were under strict regulation with AQMD here in Paramount. There has not been any formal city plan to address continued oversight. Why? The budget for city staff and employees needs to be scrapped and begin again. Based on Council Member Gillian's comments and questions, it doesn't appear that any real concessions and oversight are happening. If they are, we, the people of Paramount, aren't seeing it. Council members, I implore you, stay awake. We need your oversight to manage our city for the betterment of all residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. De Leon came back. He's asking to speak again.
Okay.
Mr. De Leon? Oh, there he is.
Good afternoon to all of you, City Council member, Mayor, staff, public. Thanks for letting me speak. Okay, I'm here to demand our right, and we want special elections.
We're going to talk about this after the presentation, and you can come and speak about that. That's what we just announced, that anything beforehand is going to do with the items not on the budget or on the agenda. And after the presentation, then people wishing to speak under public comment can certainly come up and speak at that point.
Oh, it's gonna be like open?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, that's it, Mr. Mayor, on the general public comments.
Okay, then under new business, we have the discussion, so on and so forth, about the vacancy, but first, we're going to have a presentation about some of the legalities and so on and so forth involved. If you're ready on that, are we?
Yes, we are, as soon as a slide comes up. Okay, there we are. The presentation before you tonight was a tag team between the city attorney as well as me, the city manager. As we all know, Councilmember Diane Martinez, she announced her retirement from the council at the last council meeting, and her retirement became effective June 7th. That was last Friday. If the council desires to fill her seat, there are options to filling the vacancy. And those two options are a special election or an appointment. Now, there is a deadline for filling the seat or for calling for an election, and that is 60 days from the day that Councilmember Martinez retired, and this is August the 6th. So let's look at the three options that the council has for the councilmember vacancy. The first option is to take no action. This means that the position would remain vacant until after the March 2020 election. Now, there are a few scenarios with this option that we've identified. If there is a tied 2-2 vote, for instance, on an agenda item, the result would be of that item, there's no action taken. Also, if there are any urgency items that come before the council members, there would have to be a unanimous vote of all 4 council members rather than the current required 4/5 vote. We look back over the last 3 years, and just for the council's reference, we had 9 urgency ordinances that came before the council. Lastly, if there are 2 council members unavailable for a meeting, we would essentially need to cancel the meeting because there would not be a quorum. We look back over the last 3 years, and there were instances where there were only 3 council members at the meeting with 2 council members out, and that occurred 2 times in the past 3 years. So the scenarios laid out here are centered around the potential, and I want to stress the potential for lack of efficiency on the council. So let's go over to option 2. Option 2 is to hold a special election. The council would need to make this decision no later than August the 6th, and the soonest a special election can take place is November the 5th. There are issues with this option should the council go down this road, and we wanted to make you aware of them. And the first one has to do with timing. With an anticipated swearing-in date of December the 3rd, the term for this new council member would only be 3 months. The next issue is cost. According to the county registrar recorder's office, the cost for this option would be $287,000. This shows a letter that we received last week, actually on Friday, from the county that confirms this cost. You can see it's on, I don't know if it's hard to see for you, but it's the first paragraph there. It says $287,000. Okay, our last option we're presenting tonight is an appointment. And again, these are all by law. The challenge here is that there's not much time to fill this vacancy, so the council would need to act rather quickly if you choose this option. A couple things to keep in mind here is that the appointment must be made in public, and also there is no legal requirement for the council to use any specific way to appoint a person or a method for an appointment. So because the law doesn't require any specific method for appointing a person to fill a vacancy, here are two methods to consider. First one is to make a motion to appoint. The second one is to use an application process. So it's possible for the council to make a motion to appoint someone, and in this case, a council member, as required by law, would need to make a motion to appoint, and then that motion would be seconded by another council member and approved by at least 3 votes. The other option we've identified is to use an application process. So in this case, the council could call for interested persons to submit applications. The council could also require that the person submit a nomination paper, statement of qualifications, and make an oral presentation at a council meeting. A determination would need to be made about a deadline for application submittals and a meeting date for review of these applications. Keep in mind that if you do choose this path, you would need to act rather quickly because the deadline for establishing everything and getting somebody selected to fill the seat is August the 6th. A calendar is included in your agenda packet tonight to assist you if you decide to look further into this option. A lot of planning would need to be done for this and would need to take into account any council member vacations that are on the horizon. There is one other alternative for the council to consider for the application process. As we know, there are 8.5 months remaining on former council member Martinez's term. It's not an exorbitant amount of time. As such, the council may want to consider a pool of residents who have varying degrees of experience, familiarity, and knowledge of the Paramount City government. And these are commissioners. This gives the council a pool of 25 residents to choose from. Again, this is just another viable alternative for the city council's consideration. With that, the recommended action for you tonight is to consider the options to fill the vacancy and provide direction to staff. And once again, as a review, the 3 options are to take no action, hold a special election on November 5th, or to make an appointment by August the 6th, 2019. And that concludes our presentation, and both the city attorney and I are available for questions.
Any questions from the council before we open this for the next public comment?
Yes.
Okay.
So on some of the options, for the cost of $287,000, that came from the county, correct?
Yes.
And when we had budgeted last year $387 for a recall that never took place, that money was budgeted though, right?
It was.
Okay, and then I looked at the following budget to come, and that has doubled the city manager's budget by double, from $68,000 to about $141 for the 2020 election, correct?
That is correct.
So these numbers are nothing new. And I just don't.
I'm sorry, nothing new in the sense
These
that.
numbers are nothing new as when it comes to voting, special elections, recalls. I mean, this is the cost of running an election.
It is, but for this amount, it's more than what is for the March election. Is
The March of
Exactly.
2020 election?
Yes, correct. So what you see in the budget is the March election, and this is not in the budget, so.
Right, but what I'm saying is when we had budgeted in the last budget, in case there was a recall that went through, we had budgeted 380-something thousand, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and we were showing
So-
the budget in
So what I'm
deficit.
saying is whether it's a recall, whether it's a special election, these numbers are the numbers that it costs to run an election.
They are the numbers that cost to run an election, yes.
And we have the money to do that because it's been budgeted in the past.
Yes, in the past it was budgeted, but we were recommending to pull it out of the reserve fund. So that's a whole other discussion if the council decides to go there. My only recommendation to come up with the revenue to fund such a special election would be to pull it from our reserve fund as we did for the potential for a recall election last year.
Right, and so with voting rights that are a vital part of our governance, both local and national, I don't think you can put a price tag on what that means to the community to be able to vote for their representative. When our community elects 5 members of city council, that's exactly what you did. You elected 5 city council members. And now to ask 4 city council members to take away your right to vote and let us pick it for you, when we have continuous been the council of loopholes, I would urge you as a community, don't let anyone take away that right from you. There's money there. In addition to not allowing somebody to take away that right, you have to look at what the big picture is here. When you put somebody in this seat, you are giving them the upper leg on the 2020 election. Because they've sat in this seat, you are giving somebody the upper hand. Is that fair? There are a lot of people who plan on running in 2020, and I can guarantee you any of them would want to sit on the seat. Now, the other option that we were talking about, if we fill the vacancy with one of our commissioners, I would say in addition to that, if that's the way we're going to go, because we know who we're looking at. I know there's been meetings aside from what I have been privy to. And a perfect point of that is, who knew Diane Martinez was stepping down that night? Who knew? I didn't know, but Mayor Hansen sure knew when exactly to say we need to call a special council meeting at 4:30 on a Tuesday. How did you know that? I didn't know that. My point is, if we fill a vacancy with a seated commissioner, that commissioner should not be able to run in 2020. You can't give them the upper hand. And that goes to my commissioners, to anybody's commissioners. That's something that I would ask that be put in if we did go fill the vacancy with one of our commissioners or anybody. Put that in there. Don't give anybody the upper hand in anybody who's planning to run in 2020. The budget is there, and I don't want to get into the budget right now, but I could, but I'm not going to. But I'll do it at the end in council comments. I'll ask more questions as we go, but those would be my 2 questions, that we put that stipulation that they couldn't run in 2020 if we ended up going that way, because we all know who we're looking at. And I urge the community to seek an election. It's your right. Don't let anybody. Our history is we worked hard for our rights to vote. Don't let anybody take away those rights.
I'll answer about myself in that Councilmember Martinez came to me as mayor to inform me of her decision. That's how I knew about this. So that answers that. Any further comments? None? Okay, we'll go to the public comments now then.
Yes, sir. All right. Our first one is from Mr. Reno Radula, and he wants to talk, well, these are all going to be about the council member vacancy.
Yes.
Mr. Radula?
Good evening to everyone. To me, appointment is not an option, because usually it would be involved conflict of interest. Anyway, pursuant to California Government Code Title 4 regarding a vacancy occurs in an elective council person, I therefore, based on my humble opinion, suggest that the Paramount City Council, as provided by the chapter to fill the vacancy of our honorable councilwoman Diane Martinez, who recently tendered her resignation for whatever reason, in which the people of Paramount should, in exchange for her courage and excellent service to this community, be given merit and be bestowed upon her for years of unconditional service. We thank you so much, Councilwoman Martinez, and God always be with you. In view of this, I suggest the city, based on Section 34902, should call for special election immediately and be held on the next regularly established election date, not less than 140 days from the call of the special election, if it me. In this way, after filling the vacancy, thereafter the people of Paramount shall be given a fair and honest whatever legislation and policy that are being promulgated in the future based on the majority of our elected officials that are each elected by the mandate of our Paramount voters. I thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Next is Teodora Rios. Ms. Rios?
Sorry. Good afternoon, Mayor and council members.
Good afternoon.
I come before you as a voice of Paramount residents. In the recent event of the resignation of Diane Martinez, we request that we have a special election to fill this vacancy. Only through an election can residents decide who best represents their interest. To the argument that a special election costs the city too much money, I say that last year, 4 of your council members voted to extend their term by 1 year. Now, 1 council member cannot fulfill that term. This situation was created by your decision to stay an extra year, as opposed to having an election in November of 2018. Why should the residents suffer for the consequences of this bad decision? Please do not take away our right to vote who we want in the city council and suppress our voice yet again. However, in the unlikely event that you do choose to appoint someone to the seat, it should be an anonymous vote by all council members. The person assigned to this seat should be someone who is neutral and does not plan to run in March 2020 election. From past experience, I personally do not have the confidence that the council will appoint a person that is a people's choice from someone to represent us, the Paramount City residents, and not your special interest. Therefore, I ask again that you approve a special election so there will be no question who the people have chosen to represent us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Michael Alva. Mr. Alva?
Good evening, council. I believe that we should have a special election. The people of Paramount deserve a special election. You guys sat up there a year ago, appointed another term for you guys, and I believe that this was an all, a little dance room, because I knew Diane was going to retire in 1 year, and that was a year ago. She had spoken about that a year ago. So it doesn't come to a surprise to me that she's no longer here. And if she was here, I would ask her directly, do you remember that conversation? So by having a special election, it gives us, the citizens, a right to vote. I want to vote for somebody that I believe in. You know what? I cannot trust the city council. I do not trust you. And Mr. Hanson, we are not people of ignorance here in the city of Paramount. The people in Paramount are not ignorant. When you run in 2020, excuse me.
Hold on a minute. If you will review the rules of decorum, you're not allowed to call out council members. And I don't know where you got that from.
I apologize for that.
You got to address the entire council.
Whoever runs in are you going to give me back my minutes? Whoever runs in 2020, be sure to know that the Paramount residents are not ignorant people. And we will remember your decision that you will make. please give us the right to vote. Please, I'm asking you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Talon Thibodeau Iniguez. Mr. Iniguez? Or Ms. Iniguez, excuse me.
I'm a huge fan of Paramount and its people. Hi, neighbors. I love being a resident, and I have appreciated the many, many ways the city has been turned around for the better over my lifetime due to partnerships between the city and its inhabitants, especially since I'm raising my children here in Paramount also. Thanks for the opportunity for us to speak on topics that affect our city. I love that we can all come together and have this conversation even when we have differing opinions. I remember the first city council meeting I attended as a teen, and I learned a lot. I heard a lot of different perspectives about the potential decisions discussed, and I learned that everything comes at a cost. So spending time on one topic takes time from another important topic. Spending money here takes away from other necessary projects there. And so it was a good learning experience for me as a young adult. We have a very diverse population in our city, which I love, and diverse cultures, beliefs, and lifestyles. And it's a joy to be in a community and in unity with even people I have differing opinions with. Likewise, we have a diverse city council that we have elected in, which I also like. Why would the cost of a special election be worth the possible benefits it may provide? Haven't we elected a city council with diverse perspectives that can come together in unity with research and words to temporarily appoint someone to assist in the work needed until spring? Seems like a high cost for 3 months of work on top of a salary. It would be foolish to spend money on a special election instead of expecting unity and teamwork from our city officials that we've already elected in. Instead, I expect our diverse city officials to be able to responsibly appoint someone together in unity, just like I expect my kids here to work together to accomplish important, difficult tasks, except more so because here we have intelligent adults, capable people in important roles. Anyone who's been at Paramount, at least as long as I have, can see the positive changes in our city, and it's undeniable, but there's more work to do. So let's be smart with our efforts and resources and rally together and work together. And I hope somebody's appointed who will also work for the good of our city and its people. It's the wisest thing to do, using our money wisely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Gerald Serta. Mr. Gerald Serta.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Today I was surprised that there was actually a meeting at 4:30 for a resignation. I do want to thank Ms. Martinez for the time that she spent with the city. It was a surprise. We didn't get to say bye to her. But I do want to request that there be a special election. I know that they mentioned there's a cost of $287,000. We also had a cost of buying monitors. We had a cost of hiring an outside contractor that was unforeseen, yet the city was able to provide that instead of the companies paying for these expenses. So it would be fair to get a special election and invest that money. The residents would like a special election, and I think it would be fair to exercise our rights, our democracy, even if it's budgeting or using the reserves that the city may have. So I think that would be a good idea. And we need everybody, we need the mayor, the vice mayor, the council members to make the decisions. There's going to be some tough decisions, as you've already heard about the budget and persisting issues with the air. So we need everybody to make the decision, a well-rounded decision and discussion, instead of being one-sided or biased. So if it's up for the residents, we should have an election. I think if you go out and think about it, the election would be well-rounded, fair, and that's what the residents want. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Tricia Belrose. Tricia Belrose.
Good evening, Mayor Hansen and City
Evening.
Council members. My name is Trish Belrose. I'm your constituent, a Paramount resident. Me and my family have been residents of this city for over 30 years. Over this time, I've seen a lot of change, both good and bad, just like at home. I am here tonight after attending the past several council meetings And there are a couple of concerns that I wanted to bring to light tonight. First, in last week's council meeting, when Diane Martinez resigned, this created this situation. This is the primary reason we're all here tonight. I wanted to implore the council and Mayor Hansen to hold a special election. It is the right thing to do. I would rather see the position remain vacant until the next scheduled election than to have an appointment of someone who will only rubber stamp approval to all upcoming initiatives. At present, there doesn't seem to be any oversight of major issues of critical concern to members of the community, specifically the budget, environmental and emergency safety plans, and the desire by the city manager to raise city sales taxes within the city. I've heard rumblings that to hold a special election for Ms. Martinez's council seat is going to be very costly in a year that is projected to show a loss, which supports the idea for an appointment, and I reiterate the need to hold the position open. When the state Senate seat for the district was vacated due to our representative becoming the state's insurance commissioner, there was never a question of the need for a special election to fill the position. We did it. And I have to believe that that was probably twice as expensive or 3 times as expensive as what it was going to cost here. As I'm sure you're all aware, the entire state is in the process of revamping the voting system to include digital tablet devices for upcoming elections. Perhaps Paramount could volunteer to test drive this new equipment and process and thereby offset the costs. Maybe we could think outside the box for a change and not just take the word of the elections committee. That would be required, all those costs related to a special election. And lastly, on the topic of a special election, the cost should be covered by the reserves. That is what I believe such reserves are meant to cover, not to pay raises for city employees as proposed in last week's budget overview. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Luis Baptista. Mr. Baptista.
So good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, my fellow brothers and sisters from the city of Paramount. I'm here to speak today on behalf of all the youth and everyone in the city. As I heard budgets, as I heard propositions last week, it actually left me thinking and it left me praying, what is the best thing for our city? As a fellow police officer, and I hear, and I don't mean to take it on you, but you're my brother. My contract was 3%, and I hear contracts within our city at 5% for 1 year, and the other contracts that are happening. It leads me to think, what about the future? What about our kids? I used to work as an after-school program director in South Central, 64th and Hooper Edison Middle School. So I'm cut from the same cloth as your star leaders. I'm cut from the same cloth as a lot of our young members of our city. So I vote for what's best for our city, which is, if we're looking at budgets, if we're looking at money, let's not do anything and let's wait for people that really want to run and do a positive impact in our city, prepare themselves with the right tools so they can run in 2020. Or don't appoint somebody because it will stain your leadership. Don't appoint somebody, whatever council member, don't appoint someone because that person is always going to be scrutinized. And I sure hope that nobody would like to be appointed on a time like this. Give that power to the people, give that power to our community, and let us choose. Let us choose who best represents our interests, who best represents our voice, who best represents the future of our children, whether we are white, Hispanic, black, it doesn't matter. What is best for the city of Paramount? What is best for this community? I go with those two options. I would prefer that you leave that power how it was meant to be by our forefathers. The power of the people get to choose what is right for our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Jose De Leon. Mr. Jose De Leon. Did you leave again? Mr. De Leon. Oh, there you are.
Hello, I'm back. We had elections in 2016. We were supposed to have election in 2018, but the three of you, vote in favor of appointing yourself for another year and a half more. Now the situation in which we are between spending money or saving money. Most of our residents, including myself, are asking for special elections. I like the idea also about postponing, leaving the seat until the next election, if that is the case. I don't even have an idea about the budget, how tight we are. But listen to us. In 2018, we were asking to have elections, but you decide to postpone them. And I remember mentioning to you, and only a dictator learner do those things that you did. You just automatic perpetuate in power for another 2 years. That's the term that we use in Spanish, you know. But listen to our constituents. Most of us, we want special election. Or let's say, we are not gonna have a special election, but at least wait until the next election. If that is the case, if we talk about money-wise, I might be in favor of waiting, but I don't like the idea of appointing anyone because there's gonna be a lot of speculations, and it's like you guys taking the decision for us. Having representation in a democratic institutions is one of the most valuable rights we have in a community as a taxpayer in our city. We have the right to choose whoever we want. We are in a democratic system. You know, even like when I look at the Latin American countries, they are doing things that nobody could expect them in the past. And living here with you as an incumbent, that you totally close the door, don't listen to us, you already forget that you represent us. And I know some residents, they might say, oh, there is a division. Yeah, there is always a division. It's gonna be people in favor of you and against you, but it's part of the democratic system. That's how a democratic system works. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Linda Chaparro-Martin. Ms. Linda Chaparro-Martin.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm not going to go on and on. Everything's been said. You know it. You are up there because you're going to represent the community. That is your job. That's why you were put there. And I think sometimes you forget. So I want to go on record saying that my first choice is special election. We have that right. We're in the United States. Okay? We have that right to vote. But if you're not going to vote on that, number one, I don't want any kind of appointment by any of you. I'd rather leave it vacant than let you appoint somebody. And if you don't listen to our requests, if you don't hear your community, what you do will be remembered in 2020.
Thank you.
And our last speaker is Mr. Alex Yanis. Mr. Yanis.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the council.
Afternoon.
Ms. Gillen, Ms. Lemons, good afternoon. My fellow City of Paramount residents, buenas tardes. I'll get right to it. I'm against the special election, and I think it's fiscally irresponsible for us to spend $287,000 to appoint somebody for 3 months, 4 months. Just fiscally irresponsible. If you work for me and you decided to do something like that, you'd be packing your bags and going home. Those funds that are in our city, they're to run our city for, you never know what kind of problem we might have. We might have an air quality issue that we might get some filters for, we might need stuff for that. But at the same time, with that breath, I agree with the rest of the people that came up here. Don't appoint anybody, because appointing somebody that's been a commissioner, that's been under your wing, under anybody's wing, I know the backdoor stories, I just think that would leave it, so much turmoil. There's already so much hate and animosity going around with within the city. Either you're for the council that's existed or for the new council members that are coming in. I agree with the rest of my fellow residents. You know, leave it vacant. If anything, leave it vacant. Don't appoint somebody, because that's just going to cause, like I said earlier, it's going to cause so much animosity. And pick somebody neutral. You know, I'm offering my services. You know, I'm neutral to it. You know, I speak Spanish too. That would help. But see, just like I like to hear them laugh, I want to see us all laughing. There's no reason why we should all have angst and hate. You know, I watched a meeting that happened in the city of Compton where they were all accusing each other of stuff. Oh, you're just holding this 3 votes because you want to remain in charge. You know, I don't want that from our city. You know, the staff, although we disagree on a lot of things, right? I think we could ultimately still come together as a community. Todos unidos, huh? Todos unidos, we could come together for the better good of our community. Fiscally irresponsible, if you spend that amount of money for this election, you know, it just doesn't make no sense. For 3 months, it does not make any sense to me. You know, let's hold off. I know we all have our appointees, our commissioners. You know, I know who they are. I've been in the city for 47 years. I know well enough what's going on backstage, you know, but let's hold off on some of that. I definitely don't want to be caught up on Facebook, on social media, throwing anybody under the bus or going, you know what, I'm a Peggy Lemons loyal. Oh no, I'm going for Lori Gillen, or I'm going for this, I'm going for that. My best interest is the city of Paramount. That's where I stand. And where do you stand in that? Are we all together on this? Thank you for your time.
Hold on. Mr. Yanez, stand up. Come on up.
Thank you.
Voting is a passion for a lot of people, and you can't put a price tag on it. That's like me saying, how much are your handball courts going to cost?
$685,000.
That's too much.
Wait.
Too much.
Hold on.
That's gone over
I
7 years.
think, I'm just saying.
Hold on.
It's the same analogy. Hold on, what?
Yeah, we're not going to get in the discussion. It's their turn to speak right now.
No, I know, but we can address them back.
No. You can ask questions.
Okay, I did.
not
I said, how
comment.
much is too much for your handball courts? How much will your handball courts cost?
From what I know, it's $685,000.
Okay, what if somebody told you that's too much?
I've been told that's too much. I said
We're
it.
getting in a
Right,
conversation here.
but to you, is it too much?
It's not too much. Actually, it's, you know, let's get them up.
And that's how people feel about their right to vote. It's not too much.
I agree.
That's all.
You know,
Okay,
they all
again,
have their right. You know, excuse me.
yeah, again, we're not getting in discussions here on this. It's your guys' turn to speak. Okay, any further?
No, sir.
No further?
No further.
Now you can speak.
Really?
I didn't realize that. We're done. Okay.
So I can speak?
Yes, yeah, I'm calling on you
all
right now.
Thank you. So I would just like things to be done with complete and total transparency. That's my big issue. I don't think that in our minds we should have somebody in mind that we already should appoint. I agree with most of you, leave it empty or run a special election. I don't think it's for us to appoint anyone that's going to represent you. That's your vote. That's your right. We have a long history of doing things with loopholes, and I'm hoping that this isn't one of those. We find loopholes for extending our terms. We find loopholes from taking money from metal companies that will pay into our election and it's okay. We find loopholes for working for the Chamber of Commerce that we pay into. We find loopholes to have a salary, and then in addition to the salary, this is how much I make, but we're going to pay you more because we're going to give you a $600 a month car allowance, and then we're going to pay 8%, but that's not your salary. So be transparent. So I'm just hoping that we don't do this whole appointment by another loophole. Be transparent. You deserve transparency. Somebody might get elected that doesn't even have the same views as I do, and that's okay because they were elected. And so don't give up your right. That's the only thing I can urge you, is do not give up your right to vote. That's been a long, hard fight, and that's how it should remain. And let's not continue to do things, backdoor deals. You get charged this much to have the Mariposa building for 6 months, 2022, but you for one day at Paramount Rec Center, 1,800. Let's not be the city of loopholes. Just because we can do something here up on council doesn't mean we should. Hold us accountable.
Okay, that's it. Councilmember Lemons. We're in the general discussion now. What's going to be done?
I would just add that I appreciate hearing from everybody. I've been very busy for the last week trying to hear from as many people as possible, knocking on people's doors, sending out texts, making phone calls. I totaled up the number of people that I spoke to before I came here, and I was able to reach out to 122 people. And without exception, you talk about the will of the people. We do have to hear everybody. I would just put on the record that with the exception of one person, I was asked that we do an appointment and not a special.
Where are they?
It's her turn to
You
speak
want the
now.
truth of why they're not here? They actually commented that they've come to council meetings and they've been so bullied on Facebook and by people in the audience, they don't want to be part of that.
That was your page, the
on.
Paramount Positive MAGA,
You know
Make
what,
America
I'm not
Great
getting
Again.
discussion.
We're
You
not
asked the
gonna get into
question, I
discussion.
asked it.
It's her
But
turn
I
now.
just wanted to put on the record the feedback that I got from all of the people that I was able to speak to. They all had their varying reasons of why they wanted to do it and how they thought we should go about it, and several recommendations of people that they felt should have an appointment. So I would just lend that information to you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hoffmeyer.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out this evening and expressing your views. Let's just start first off with the a special election. You know, it's if it was for 2 years somebody was going to be elected, I would say, yeah, it's a good idea to have a special election. But for 3 months, they would get put on the city council in December. And then the election would come up in March 3rd. So that would be 3 months. In the meantime, I think nominations for people who are running for city council start in November. Is that not true?
I believe so. Can you confirm that, November?
So
November.
I think relatively speaking, to spend $287,000 for someone to sit on the city council for 3 months, I think is kind of ridiculous. As far as having somebody... Pardon?
You don't have
This is not- hang
I
on.
just consider the sort.
Yes.
Anyway,
Wait a minute.
we're going...
No, just let the council member, the public comment's been closed.
Yes. Yeah, public, yeah, exactly.
Okay,
go ahead.
as far as the city council running with 4 people, I don't think it's appropriate. Someone's going on vacation, someone gets sick at the same time, no business is taken care of with the city. If we have a special ordinance, we can't pass any special ordinance in the city because we don't have 5 councilmen sitting on the council.
Don't need 'em.
Or women, excuse me. So I think it's important that we have 5 people on the council at all the time. And filling the vacancy by appointment. I know it's a sore topic, but I think it's the only way we can do this and keep the city moving forward and not have any hiccups and waiting until December to have somebody else fill in the position. That's all I got to say, Tom.
Thank you.
Can I ask Daryl a question?
Sure.
No,
Daryl,
let me speak first, please.
Go ahead. I asked.
And I agree with that. If I'm not mistaken, it was commented about Senator Laura's term and a special election there. Yes, that was probably very expensive, but I do believe that was for a 2-year term, not for a 3-month term. I personally, I don't think it's wise either to be seated up here with just 4 members. It was stated that in the event we had some controversial thing or whatever it happens to be, if you have a 2-2 vote, then there's no action taken, period. So something could come up with a recreation thing or a public safety or public works. and it could be 2-2 vote, nothing would happen. You might have potholes or something that need to be filled, and if it's 2-2 vote, nothing's going to happen with that. So to spend $287,000 to seat someone for a 3-month period doesn't make sense to me. And we're now, unfortunately, governed by the county on our elections. That's the reason for the realignment with everything. So, and I agree with Mr. Hoffmeyer that I don't think it's wise for the 8 months we have, what is it, more than that actually, that we have left in this term for us that are sitting here that would be up for reelection. I don't think it's a good idea to do that for that length of time. So I'm of the opinion that it would be best to appoint somebody and not leave a vacant chair, and that just happens to be my opinion. And that's kind of where I sit. Now, do we want to continue this or no?
I think
I know. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so
We're going to have a regular discussion here, I guess, but we're not going to go back. But we're not going to go back and forth against each other. Go ahead.
As it should be. It should be complete transparency. This is an important issue to the community.
Yes.
So when you say 2-2, number one, if you look at past pattern, 2-2, no one's ever sided with me, so I don't think that's an issue. And the other issue is...
I think it could be.
It won't be, believe me. There's still
Irrelevant.
3 of you. And so the other issue is, okay, you guys talk about appointing. This was already decided before any of this has taken place today, that you're going to appoint. So can you at least, and we're talking about representation, and this reflects you guys, you look up here and you tell me if this reflects who you are. So what I want to say is, if that's your stipulation to appoint because it's so important, then just appoint somebody who can't run in 2020. I'm still for the special election, but if you're going to appoint somebody, make a stipulation that they're filling in as a council person. They're familiar, like you said, you want them to be familiar with what happens and how they vote for the next 8 months or what have you. But just make it a stipulation that they don't get the upper hand on running in 2020, and they can't. Simple.
I have a question on that, actually. It's going to take a legal opinion. Could that be done, that you say you can't run if we appoint you?
My preliminary opinion is that you cannot force someone not to run.
Yeah.
That's a constitutional right they have to run, just like you have a right to vote.
Right.
I don't think we could put that as a stipulation.
Do you know that for certain?
What's that?
Do you know that for
No,
certain?
I said that's my preliminary opinion.
I would like to know for certain.
Yeah. It would be just like if you told someone they can't vote, or if you had a special election, it would be like that person couldn't run.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had a special election, you could then stipulate and say, the special election, you get 3 months, but you don't get to run again in 2020.
Okay,
That's been done.
That's the thing. So preliminarily, I don't think that's possible, but I'll confirm that. If it's not, I'll let you know too.
Okay, thank you. Any further comment?
Nothing I can think of
Down
right
this
now.
way? Ms. Lemons? No? Stoffmeyer?
No,
Well, that-
no, I don't have anything else to say.
Okay.
Pretty much said it.
We can entertain a motion then, I guess, at this point.
No, I'd like to wait till we get the question answered, if we could make that as a stipulation, that if we appoint somebody, that we don't want to give somebody the upper hand in 2020. And I would, if somebody wants to fill the seat and do service to the council for those months, that's fine. But we can't make that, we can't just go forward without knowing the answer to that.
Well, it would be a consensus of the council whether or not that would weigh into our decision. And I would never ask somebody who wants to serve their community and tell them, but you can't continue service. So I would be opposed
I wouldn't
to that.
either, no way.
Are we ready for a motion?
Yes.
All right, then I would,
I mean, whichever way.
after hearing everything, I would like to make the following motion. That the city council fill the vacancy created by Councilmember Martinez, number one, And 2, that the city council fill the vacancy by appointment by the city council. And 3, that the city council appoint a candidate for the vacant city council position no later than the first council meeting in July, which is July 2nd, 2019.
And who wrote that for you, Daryl? Because you're reading it up there
I had quite a meeting.
after you heard everybody, and that was pre-written for you to say it. So everything everybody had to say got tossed out the window because you had a pre-written
No, I didn't
statement
have a
ready to
pre-written-
go.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you.
You finished with your motion?
I'm finished.
I'll second that motion.
So you can call for the question. We have a first and a second.
What's that, I'm sorry?
Calling for the question. We have a first and a second.
We got a first and a second, but we can still have some discussion on this if we
Yes.
wish before we call for a vote? No. I'm sorry.
He's
That's
asking you.
Robert's rules, I'm sorry.
I think Grady wants to speak.
What's that?
I think Grady wants to speak.
Is that correct? Oh, you asked him
It's
for further
The motion
discussion.
did not mention application. It said a direct appointment to be made. The motion did not include an
appointment.
application process.
Yeah. Okay, no further, then. I'll call for a vote then.
It was pre-decided.
Councilmember Gian,
No.
Councilmember Lemmons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Hansen.
Yes.
Shame on you.
Okay. Committee reports and comments, council members. We'll start down at this end this time, being we're alternating back and forth there. Ms. Lemon.
Oh, okay, I went first last time, just at the last meeting.
Oh,
so
I'm
Lori
sorry.
is
Okay,
first.
we'll go this way then.
If she wants to, it doesn't
No,
matter to
I'll
me.
totally go first.
Okay.
So I received an anonymous letter over the weekend from a city staff employee. And I'd just like to say thank you, and I will continue to advocate for you as I promised when I was elected. And then in light of that, I received a memo from the city manager. And then in light of that, I received some contracts. And then I found out today that the city manager met with all the employees to be transparent and to show his income, what his contract states, what his salary is. But there were some things that I think were left out. And I'm just saying this because in the last city council meeting, and I read Transparent California, that he made approximately $300,000. So I said, let me see how far off I really am. How far off was Transparent California? So I looked, and his contract is about $200,000, 5% raise. It's going to take it up to about $220,000. But the things that weren't mentioned were a $600 a month car allowance, 8% into a deferred comp, which comes out to about another $22,000. A budget, which I don't have, a cell phone, benefits, and that's all fine and dandy. But the problem with that is when you go in and represent yourself at 200 or so, or 220, and you fail to show the complete package, but then when we do a comp study and they tell the employees, oh, you're right where you need to be, because if you look at your complete package with benefits, then you're good to go. And so if we're going to look at the employee's total package, we need to look at our city manager's total package as well. It can't be what's good for you isn't good for me. And the other issue I'd like clarification on is when I was talking about the classic employees that have been with the city for a long time, they're now asking them to pay 2%. And I was talking about what about increments if we have to do that at all, which I don't think is right. John Moreno was also a classic employee, so his pension has been paid for, but he would be paying 2%. But a comment was made by Councilmember Lemmons that said, oh, it's a, and this is how I took it, that it's mandated now that classic employees have to pay up to 8% now. And so the 2% is an increment that I was referring to, and that's not the case. Classic employees are not mandated to pay 8%. Only employees after 2013. So I just wanted to make that clear that when I was talking about classic employees, that's what I meant, that we do not have to make them pay 2%. And because you have no collective bargaining, you can see how things are done for you, and that's it.
You got something? Okay.
On some things, Lori, I agree with you. As far as the city manager, I always agree with you, you know that. Don't fall over, don't fall over. I'll pick you up if you do. But anyway, as far as the city manager goes, on any company, your chief executive officer, who he is, always has more salary, has benefits thrown in, and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And our city manager is no different than somebody leading another business in Paramount that has 90 employees and is on call, well, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I think to sit here and put him down that he makes too much money and stuff like that.
Not what I said, Darrell.
I think it's unfair. Yeah, you think he makes too much money.
I didn't say he makes too much money. I said we have
Hold
to be
on.
transparent about the money that he does make. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying
Okay,
it's too
okay,
much money.
okay.
I'm saying let's be transparent because we have to be transparent with our employees. And we did a comp study that had never been done in the history of the city. And then we did one. And then we said, okay, it looks like they're a little underpaid, but when you look at their total package, they're not underpaid. So that's all I'm saying is if you're going to present as one thing, stick to your own rules and present the totality.
Okay, it's his turn now, still.
Okay, and as far as the city's employees go, I think our city employees do an excellent job in our city. And I think they should all be, and I'm all for when the budget comes up to look at this over and see if there's maybe some way we can make some a little help or something, or sit down and have a real meeting with city manager so he can explain everything to me, and maybe I'm missing something.
Absolutely, would be happy to.
And it's up to you, Peggy.
Yes, go
Yes,
ahead.
Mr. Mayor. I would just, I have a few things that I would like to say. The first thing I'd like to say is I did make it very clear in the video, if you want to review it yourself from last month's, the last meeting, that I was only talking about the employees that were hired after 2013. That's what I said, going forward, employees after 2013. So I wasn't referring to anything else. It's also important that you know that when we discuss the city manager's salary, we're given lots of research about what other cities are paying, what other benefit packages are, so that we know what we have to be competitive with. So that information was given to us. It was presented to us so that we could make that. There was nothing hidden from us. We know what all of the extra benefit packages are. I know that Councilmember Guillen was sick that evening. She left directly after the council meeting, so she wasn't in the closed session when all of that information was presented. But we do ask those questions. We do go in depth on how the benefit packages compare to other cities. And even with all of that, you have to look at the salaries of the other people in the other cities, the other managers, and theirs doesn't include their benefit packages either. When we total all those together, our city manager is still in the bottom third, so there are no exorbitant fees being paid there. The other issue that I would like to address is information that I would like to bring to the council on something that's really become concerning to me, especially over the past 6 or 7 months. I've had probably 5 employees come to me and tell me that they're not happy anymore working in our city, that their jobs have become extremely stressful. There's a lot of pressure on them through false statements that are being made in social media. They want me to know that they could be leaving at any time, but that they've loved working here, and they wanted me to know why they were leaving. The other issue that I want to bring up is something that was discussed a few months ago on another board I'm on, which is Siaka Animal Control. But due to these recent statements by the employees and the letter that Ms. Guillen talked about, it was CC'd to all of us. And it was a very unhappy, disgruntled employee. If it was such, they didn't sign their name. That was their choice, whoever wrote the letter. But the problem was it was full of misinformation, which is the point that I want to get to. On the animal control board that I sit on, we experienced a situation where the agency was being attacked by cyber bullies who were posting photos of animals that were in horrible condition, underfed, lying around starving, misinformation on euthanasia numbers, all of that kind of thing. And it started causing a lot of problems for the agency. So the director then came to us and said, I would like to investigate the possibility of hiring an attorney to see if there's anything we can do about these false accusations that are being made on social media, because we're getting a lot of stress on our employees. They had some people actually rush into Siaka, with pickets and signs and kind of try to break through the barriers that were there. And so the information that came back to us was that this same situation happened in the Inland Animal Control Department. And it was the same thing with false information being posted. And so their board voted to go ahead and sue the cyber bullies that were causing the problem, and that the board would pay for it. And they had an employee who was being particularly targeted. So they did file the lawsuit. They were successful. They sued the person's homeowner's insurance. I was told that the amount could not be disclosed specifically to me, but that it was in the several $100,000 range that the lawsuit was filed. And the agency filed on behalf of the employees because they felt the need to protect them, and such a hostile work environment was being created by all the misinformation that was being put out there. So we've experienced a whole lot of that over the last few years. As public officials, we are held to a different standard, but our employees are not. It's our responsibility to protect them from lies and misinformation and misleading things that put them in harm's way. Words have consequences. Yep. And when you say things about people that aren't true, you devalue them as human beings. And when people are devalued, people then strike out of them because they have no value. With that said, I would like to get a consensus from the council to have the city attorney investigate what happened in Inland and to see about a firm or himself, because I don't want these employees who are telling me they're so stressed out, they want to leave and they can't do their job anymore, to come back and sue us because we made no effort to protect them. So I'm looking for a consensus to direct the city attorney to at least look into those options.
Can I say something before we go to consensus? I agree if something is not true. And I also want to say that it was about this time last year that employees did send another anonymous letter to the council, and they said they felt like the workplace was hostile, to please help them. And I turned that letter over to John, and they said that they felt like it was retaliation if they ever talked about any type of workplace environment. And so I told John about it, and he said he was going to look into it. In fact, I pushed and pushed until they got a law firm to go into public safety and sit there with employees and find out about the environment. Now, I can't go into specifics because some of this happened in a closed session, so I'll be very general. This law firm I had an interaction with long after that, maybe 8 months after that, and after finding that conclusion from that law firm after these retaliation allegations, I find it very suspect, because if we're talking about bullying, I've been bullied. And so I'm all about having John Kavanaugh look into it, because bullying goes in not only with employees and law firms that bully and council members. I think it needs to be looked into, but in a much broader aspect than just, certain employees, because that has been going on, as you're well aware, John, for over a year, that these anonymous letters about retaliation in the workplace have been going on. So let's just be clear about that.
you're still asking for a consensus on
I'm
this?
asking for a consensus regarding social media. I am aware of what Ms. Gillen's talking about. It was fully investigated by an outside firm. In-depth reports were given to us. I don't feel there's some huge conspiracy here. So I am specifically talking about social media because it has such ease for people not to face people and ask questions and get truthful information. And if you're going to willfully, post misinformation, if you don't want to take the time to ask questions or do some research, you need to be held responsible for your actions. That's what I'm asking for.
Okay, so you're agreeing with this
Yeah, absolutely.
consensus?
I agree.
I agree too. Okay, there we go. It's done.
4-0.
What's that?
4-0.
4-0, yes, how about that? Okay, hey, I'd like to make a few comments also. I've always thought that our staff and our employees do an outstanding job, and I've always tried to convey that on any programs and so on and so forth to those people that are here anyway. And I've lived here all my life, and I've seen it change dramatically from what we used to be. So I know that also. Well, I won't go there, what I was going to say. You guys would laugh at me. On another note, being we have a vector control meeting this Thursday, I'll be attending, so maybe next week I might have a report on the mosquitoes and what they're up to and see where we're going with that. On the yeah, they're biting, yeah. I might say, when we have so many people here, if you do have a problem, call the Greater Los Angeles Vector Control Board, and they will come out and check and spray or do whatever they need to do, and they'll show you areas that you may not even know where you have mosquitoes breeding. So, you're paying for it in property taxes already there. We all are, and they will definitely come out. So it's always a good thing to do. On a fun note, I was able to attend finally one of the Friday night market things, kind of a street fair. The other two I had not been able to attend. I had an eye surgery the day before the first one, and I was out of town the last one. I think we did an outstanding job, and our director over here told me that he thought attendance was a little bit off. I thought it was packed with people. And I might say that the lobster and shrimp roll was outstanding that I had. A little pricey, but it was very good. And I hope more people will come out and see this thing because it's doing very well, it seemed like to me, and I had a great time. Not only that, the funnel cake was very good too. So, anything further from staff?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. That's okay. I knew you were going. I just wanted to kind of explain a little bit because there is a lot going on about my salary. You all heard it, and it was out that I make $300,000 a year as my base salary. I do not make that much, and yes, I do have things that are added to my salary, but full transparency, my contracts are on the website, on the city's website, so the public can view what the council has agreed to pay me, and I have no problems with that. I've had a successful career here, 25-year career, where I have provided the very best service to this community. I feel I've led the employees the best way possible in the most professional way. I'm professional to all four of you. I would say five if Ms. Martinez would say thank you. Yes, there are benefits that are attached to my salary, and that's something that the council once again agreed to give me, and that's something that is not far from off the industry. The industry pays that. So that is something that when the council is given information by the city attorney and decides whether or not to give me an increase, to give me those benefits, that's at the point that they can say no. So that is something that, again, I feel that I've deserved. And I am proud of the job that I have, and I'll continue to serve you as hard as I can. That is my commitment to you and to lead this staff. And yes, I did have a meeting with all the employees. I had 4 meetings with the employees today with each department. And I wanted to explain them because they are, to them, what's going on. They are the face of the organization. They are out there. People will approach them. And I ended it with how proud I am to lead them, and I strongly feel that way about them. So as far as comparing things, again, that information is provided to the council, and my contract is online. So.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments from staff? Then this meeting is adjourned until next Tuesday, the 18th at 5 p.m. And thank you, everyone, for showing up and giving us your opinions.